Do you think a World Cup match is decided solely by the score? So pay attention to this scene. There are only a few minutes left. One team is losing 2-0. The entire stadium already senses that the result is decided. The opposing fans are singing louder. The commentator starts saying the game is over. On the bench, some players lower their heads. For those watching at home, that last attack seems like just an insignificant detail. But on the field, nobody considers that play a lost cause. The winger is still making a run down the flank. The midfielder is still looking for space between the lines. The center forward is still attacking the penalty area. The coach is still shouting from the sidelines as if that play could decide anything. And maybe it can. This is one of the details that many people don't realize in the World Cup. Not every goal needs to become a victory to be decisive. Sometimes a goal serves to reduce the deficit. Sometimes it serves to protect the goal difference. Sometimes it serves to keep a team alive in a standings that the fans aren't even following. From the outside, it just looks like football. 11 against 11, the ball rolling. Whoever scores the most goals wins. But the World Cup is not an ordinary championship. It's a short, grueling, unforgiving tournament where 3 games can take away 4 years of work. Therefore, within a match, there is another game happening at the same time. The score game, the balance game, the card game, the cool-headed game, the game of calculations that the coaching staff plays while the fans only look at the clock. That's why a team can keep attacking even when winning. They can celebrate a goal even when losing. They can avoid a foul in midfield as if they were avoiding a penalty. They can make a substitution that seems defensive, but is actually a tournament strategy. The fan sees the play. The coach sees the scenario. And when the World Cup starts having more teams, more groups, and more paths to the next phase, these details cease to be insignificant. They saw a strategy. Because in a World Cup, a seemingly ordinary play in the 92nd minute can be the difference between a team being eliminated and one that's still in contention. And to truly understand this, you need to look at the hidden conflict that takes place behind the scenes of the group stage. Do you actually follow the entire group stage? Or do you just wait for the table to tell you who advanced? Because that's where a lot of people are mistaken. For a long time, the logic seemed simple. 4 teams in the group, 3 games for each, the top 2 advance and the other 2 are eliminated. The fan looked at the standings, did the basic math, and that was it. If they finished 3rd, it was over. But the new World Cup changes that interpretation. With 48 teams, the tournament becomes bigger, longer, and much more complex. There are 12 groups, each with 4 teams. Each team plays 3 matches. A win is worth 3 points. A draw is worth 1. A loss is worth nothing. So far, everything seems familiar. The turning point lies in what happens next. The top 2 teams from each group advance directly. Since there are 12 groups, this puts 24 teams in the next phase. But the knockout stage now begins with 32 teams. In other words, there are still 8 vacancies left, and these 8 spots completely change the way we watch the tournament. They get the best 3rd-place finishers. This means that a team can finish the group stage outside the top 2 positions and still continue in the World Cup. But it's not an emotional reprieve. It's not a consolation prize. It's a cold comparison. The 3rd-placed team in a group then indirectly competes against the 3rd-placed teams from the other groups. Suddenly, a team that has already played its 3 games needs to watch matches of countries it may not even have faced. It's a table within a table. And this parallel table completely transforms the pressure of the final minutes. Because the coach isn't just thinking, we need to win this game. He's also thinking, what goal difference do we need to maintain? How many more goals can we score? Who is on a yellow card? Does this draw still keep us in contention? Is a 1-goal defeat still acceptable? For the fans, it's just another group stage match. For the coaching staff, it's a chessboard. And when you understand that, you begin to realize that some seemingly ordinary actions carry enormous weight. Primarily, there's a type of play that many people underestimate. That goal that doesn't change the winner of the match, but can change the fate of an entire team. Have you ever seen a team celebrate a goal after losing? For many people, it seems strange. The score remains against them. The opposing fans are still singing. The game may be practically lost, The camera shows the players quickly returning to midfield without excessive celebration, but with haste, focus, and urgency. And that brings us to the question, if that goal doesn't change who wins the game, why does it matter so much? Because in the World Cup, sometimes losing 2-1 is completely different from losing 2-0. This is one of the most important aspects of the group stage, goal difference. And it changes how a team plays, especially when there's a match between third-place teams. Goal difference is a simple calculation. Goals scored minus goals conceded. But the impact of this calculation is enormous. A team that scores 5 goals and concedes 3 ends with a positive goal difference of 2. A team that scores 2 and concedes 4 ends with a negative goal difference of 2. In the standings, this difference can be brutal. That's why a team that gets thrashed in the first round doesn't just lose 3 points. It loses a cushion. It loses peace of mind. It loses room to maneuver. It goes into the next game knowing that it might need to win convincingly, not just win. And the opposite is also true. If a team is losing but manages to score late in the game, it might be protecting its campaign. For the fan, it's just the famous consolation goal. For the analyst on the sidelines, it could be the goal that reduces the deficit, improves the comparison with other groups, and keeps the team alive. Now imagine 2 teams, tied for third place, each with 3 points. Both won 1 match and lost 2. On paper, similar campaigns. But one lost both games by a narrow margin. The other suffered a heavy defeat. One scored more goals, the other hardly attacked. At the time, this seems like a detail, but by the end of the group stage, it could be the deciding factor. Therefore, in the final minutes of a cup match, no play is completely isolated. A corner kick in the 91st minute can be worth more than it seems. A save from an improbable shot can prevent enormous damage. A counterattack launched when the team is already winning may not be vanity. It may be survival. Football seems simple when you only look at the scoreboard. But the World Cup is also played on goal difference, on the margin of victory, on the losses avoided, and on calculations that almost no one sees in real time. While goal difference already completely changes the interpretation of a match, there's an even colder second layer. When the numbers are tied, the competition starts looking for other criteria to decide who stays in the game. Do you think the World Cup standings are decided solely by points? This is a common mistake, because when 2 or more teams finish close together, the competition doesn't ask who played the most beautiful game, who had more possession, or who deserved to advance. The World Cup looks at criteria, and criteria don't involve emotion. First come the points. That's the basic principle. Whoever accumulates the most points goes ahead. But in a short group stage, 3 games can leave several teams tied. 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 loss. Or 1 win and 2 losses. Suddenly, teams from different groups end up with very similar campaigns. That's where goal difference comes in. And the balance sheet is cruel because it includes everything. The goal you scored at the beginning of the tournament, the shot your goalkeeper saved at the end, the thrashing you suffered when the game slipped away, the missed goal when it seemed like it wouldn't matter. If the goal difference is also tied, the focus shifts to goals scored, and this changes the mentality of the match. A team that scores more goals can have an advantage over another with the same points and goal difference. Therefore, sometimes attacking more isn't just an offensive choice, it's about protecting the campaign. But the most interesting detail is that these accounts don't just stay on paper. During the match, the coaching staff monitors everything. The bench receives information. The analyst observes the other groups. The assistant coach updates the head coach. And the head coach adjusts the team's approach as the situation changes. Perhaps a draw that seemed bad will now be enough. Perhaps a simple victory will no longer be comfortable. Perhaps conceding another goal is precisely the risk that cannot be accepted. That's why the end of a World Cup match can seem strange to those watching from the outside. 1. Team retreats even though they need to improve their goal difference. Another continues to press even when they are already ahead. One coach takes off a striker and brings on a midfielder to control possession. Another demands intensity until the very last second. That's not an inconsistency. It's tournament reading. In the World Cup, no game is completely isolated. It interacts with other games, with other groups, and with all tie-breaking criteria. But there is an even more delicate criterion, Because it doesn't depend on technique, kicking, or tactics. It depends on emotional control, and he can turn a silly complaint into a problem for an entire team. Have you ever noticed that, in the World Cup, sometimes the captain runs more to hold a teammate than to contest the ball? It might seem like an exaggeration, it might just seem like an attempt to slow the game down, but at times, that can be just as important a decision as a difficult save or a goal in stoppage time. Because in the World Cup, a card isn't just an individual problem, it's a piece of data in the table. A player loses his temper, complains about a call, pushes an opponent after the whistle, or arrives late in a challenge in midfield. The referee shows a yellow card. For the fan, it's just another warning. For those on the bench, it can be a huge wake-up call. In a tight group stage, especially when comparing third-placed teams, discipline can become a tiebreaker, and that's when football stops being just about technique and starts being about mental control. A team might have the same points as another. They might have a similar goal difference. They might have scored the same number of goals. When everything is squeezed together, the competition starts to look at details that seemed secondary, and one of them is on-field behavior. This completely changes the pressure on the players. Imagine a defensive midfielder, exhausted, on the verge of a tense match. He knows he needs to protect the defense, but he also knows that a mistimed tackle could harm the entire team. Imagine a striker who's angry because he was fouled and the referee didn't call it. He wants to complain, but the captain knows that yellow card could lead to serious consequences. Therefore, in the World Cup, maturity also plays a role. The athlete needs to make quick decisions amidst noise, fatigue, and tension. They need to compete at their limit without crossing the line. They need to be aggressive without being reckless. They need to defend their country without letting emotion cloud their judgment. And that's one of the hardest details to see on television. The camera shows the foul, the replay shows the contact, but it doesn't always show the strategic importance of that card. Sometimes the smartest move isn't the dribble, the shot, or the game-saving tackle. It's about breathing. Take a step back. Don't respond to the provocation. Don't give the referee a reason to pull out his card. Because, in a World Cup, the team that survives isn't just the one with talent. It's the one that understands the rules, withstands the pressure, and controls its own impulses when the game starts to heat up. And when you add up the balance, goals, cards, substitutes, and psychological pressure, you realize one thing. The World Cup isn't decided solely by big plays. Often it changes precisely in the details that almost nobody is looking at. Now you know. A World Cup match isn't just about the scoreboard in the corner of the screen. She lives in the goal that reduces a defeat, in the defense that prevents a worse result, in the striker who keeps pressing when everyone thinks the game is over, in the captain who pulls a teammate away from the referee before a card becomes a problem, in the coach who looks at the bench, at the standings, at the other groups, and makes a decision that, to those on the outside, seems strange. This is the kind of football that many people don't see. The World Cup is where technique meets pressure, where a beautiful play can decide a match, but a silent decision can save a campaign, where talent matters, of course, but game intelligence weighs just as heavily, because in a short tournament with teams from all over the world, 3 games can carry the weight of years of preparation, and when the group stage gets more complex, every detail takes on a whole new importance. Goal difference is no longer a footnote statistic. Cards are no longer just individual punishments. Added time is no longer dead time, and that seemingly ordinary play in the 91st minute could be affecting a table that determines who continues to dream and who goes home. That's why great players need more than just skill. They need to understand the moment, know when to accelerate, know when to control, know when to avoid risk, know when to accept a result. Know when a goal is worth more for the standings than for the celebration. And that's what makes the World Cup so different. Because it's not just football. It's rules, calculation, emotion, strategy, reading the game, nervousness, and survival. It's a game within a game. A contest that takes place on the ball, in the mind, on the bench, and even in the details that the camera barely shows. So the next time you watch a World Cup match, don't just look at who won. Observe the player's behavior. The desperation in the final minutes, the coach's reaction, the careful handling of cards, the search for A goal that seems insignificant, the defense that appears normal, but could change an entire standings. Because when you understand these layers, football ceases to be just about results. He turns to reading, and perhaps that's what separates those who merely watch from those who truly understand the game. If this video made you look at the World Cup in a different way, leave a like, comment on a detail you had never noticed during a match, and subscribe to the channel, because in the next videos we will continue to reveal the football that happens beyond the scoreboard.